The stone grinding against dried feverfew made a sound like whispered secrets. I barely noticed. My hands moved with practiced rhythm, the way my mother taught me before fever took her 5 winters past. The apothecary smelled of rosemary and nettle root. Tom laughed in the back room where he sorted yarrow stems. Elowen hummed while labeling clay jars. This was my kingdom, small, fragrant, safe. Then the bell chimed. A shadow filled the doorway, broad-shouldered beneath a traveler's cloak dark as old blood. When he pushed back the hood, my grinding stone stilled. Everyone in the realm knew that face. Sharp jaw, storm-gray eyes, a thin scar slicing through his left brow like lightning frozen in flesh. Long dark hair bound with leather cord. Alexander, the Alpha King who conquered 3 territories and never smiled. Yet he stood among my hanging herbs looking displaced, dangerous, a wolf in a garden of healing plants. I did not curtsy, did not lower my gaze. I simply asked, "What ails you, traveler?" His eyes widened. Nobody spoke to kings this way. "You know who I am," he said, voice rough as river stones. "In this shop," I replied, returning to my work, "everyone is simply someone who needs healing." He smiled then, not kindly, like a predator who just found prey worth hunting. He came back 3 days later. I was crushing valerian root when the bell chimed, and somehow I knew before looking up. Alexander entered without the cloak this time, dressed in simple leather and dark wool that did nothing to diminish his presence. A king trying to look common. He failed spectacularly. "The remedy worked," he said, and standing awkwardly near a shelf of dried mint bundles. Valerian usually does. I did not stop working. For sleeplessness. I need more. I glanced at him then. His jaw was tight, shadows bruising the skin beneath his eyes. A man who fought sleep like an enemy. "You need more than herbs," I said plainly. "You need to stop carrying whatever war you are still fighting in your mind." His eyes narrowed. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth quirked. "You are refreshingly blunt." "I am honest. There is a difference." He bought more valerian, and a salve I suggested for the old scar tissue I noticed when he rolled up his sleeve. He lingered longer than necessary, asking about the properties of wolfsbane and whether I had ever treated battlefield wounds. I had not, but I listened as he described injuries he had seen. And I told him what herbs might have helped. Yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for broken bones, willow bark for pain. When he finally left, Elowen peeked out from the back room, eyes wide. "That was the king," she whispered, scandalized. "That was a man with insomnia and scar tissue," I replied. "Same as anyone else." But I was lying. He was not the same as anyone else, and he kept coming back. Once a week became twice, then 3 times, always with some excuse. Salve for his shoulder, tonic for mental clarity, tea for headaches, each time he stayed longer. Our conversations shifted from medicinal properties to battlefield strategy, from healing techniques to the weight of crowns. "Why do you not bow?" he asked one afternoon, leaning against my workbench while I prepared a poultice. "When I enter, should I?" I met his gaze directly. Will it help the medicine work better?" His laugh was short, surprised. "No." "Then it serves no purpose here." I returned to grinding garlic and honey. "In this shop, you are not a king. You are simply Alexander, a man who sleeps poorly and thinks too much." Something shifted in his expression, softened. "I have not been simply Alexander in a very long time. Perhaps that is why you cannot sleep." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Tell me about your family." So I did. About Elowen, who wanted to learn healing but was easily distracted by pretty things. About Tom, who was better with numbers than people and kept our ledgers impeccably. About my mother, who taught me everything before the fever took her, and how I had been 16 and terrified and determined not to lose what she had built. He listened with an intensity that made my skin prickle, like I was the most important thing in his world in that moment. "You raised them," he said. Not a question. Someone had to. "You were a child yourself." I was old enough. I tied off the poultice with practiced efficiency. We do what we must for those we love. His eyes studied my face like he was memorizing it. Yes, we do. The visits grew more personal. He told me about his fortress, cold and echoing, filled with advisors who wanted things and guards who feared him. About his first mate who died bringing their stillborn son into the world, and how he had buried his heart with them both. About the loneliness of command, the weight of decisions that killed men, the exhaustion of being a weapon instead of a person. I listened. I did not offer empty comfort. But I understood loss, and he seemed to know it. "You are the only person who speaks to me like I am real," he said one evening, his voice rough. "Everyone else sees the crown or the conqueror. You see the man. The man is the only part worth seeing." His hand reached across the workbench, stopping just short of touching mine. "Dine with me, at the fortress. Let me show you gratitude properly." I pulled my hand back. "No." He blinked. "No? I am not interested in becoming another Alpha's plaything, Alexander. I know how these things work. A few pretty dinners, some gifts, then expectations I have no intention of meeting." I held his gaze steadily. "If you want conversation, you know where my shop is, but I will not be your amusement or your conquest." The air between us changed, thickened. See, his expression did not darken with anger as I expected. Instead, something more dangerous flickered in those storm-gray eyes, something hungry and determined and absolutely unwilling to accept rejection. "You think that is what I want?" His voice dropped lower. "To conquer you?" "I think you are a king who is accustomed to getting what he desires." "What I desire," he said slowly, leaning closer, "is someone who challenges me, who does not fear me, who makes me feel alive instead of empty." His eyes locked on mine. "And I have just found her." My pulse jumped. I forced it steady. "Then you will have to settle for friendship, or nothing at all." He straightened, and that predatory smile returned, the one that sent warning bells through my entire body. "We will see, Jasmine." He left without buying anything that day. But I knew with absolute certainty he would return, and I did not know whether I feared that or wanted it. The smell woke me first, smoke, acrid and wrong, curling under my chamber door like serpent's breath. Then Elowen's scream shattered the night. I bolted from bed, bare feet hitting cold floorboards. Orange light flickered beneath the doorframe, heat pressed against the wood like something alive and hungry. "Tom, Elowen!" I yanked open the door and smoke punched into my lungs, choking, blinding. Flames devoured the shop below, crawling up walls like demons climbing from hell. The herbs, the remedies, everything my mother built, burning. "Jasmine!" Tom's voice, terrified from the back room. I ran through the smoke, eyes streaming, lungs screaming. Found them huddled by the window, Elowen sobbing into Tom's shoulder. Said he was 13 and trying desperately to be brave. "The ledge!" I gasped, shoving the window open. Cold night air rushed in. "Climb down! Now! The shop! Forget the shop! Move!" Tom went first, helping Elowen after. I glanced back once at the flames consuming everything I had fought to preserve. 5 years of work, my mother's legacy, our livelihood, gone. I climbed down behind them, dropping the last few feet onto the cobblestones. We collapsed in the street, coughing, shaking. Neighbors emerged from surrounding buildings, some with buckets, others just staring. The fire brigade arrived too late. They always did in the market quarter. By dawn, only half the shop remained. Blackened walls, collapsed shelves, the acrid stench of destroyed herbs and burned dreams. I stood in the ashes, Elowen and Tom pressed against my sides, saw and tried very hard not to weep in front of them. I failed. "Jasmine!" Tom's voice was small. "What do we do?" I did not have an answer. Our savings would last perhaps 2 months. Rebuilding would cost more than we possessed. We had nowhere else to go. "We survive," I whispered, like always. But I did not believe my own words. Jasmine. That voice, low, rough, unmistakable. I turned, and Alexander stood at the edge of the ruins, still dressed for riding, his hair windswept. He must have come the moment he heard. Behind him, 2 of his personal guard waited with horses. "Are you hurt?" He strode toward me, eyes scanning for injuries with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "We are fine," my voice cracked. "The shop is not." His jaw clenched. He looked at the destruction, then back at me with something dark and furious burning in his gaze. "This was not an accident." "I know." I had smelled the accelerant, lamp oil, generously applied. "Someone wanted us gone." "Duke Corvin and Lord Hastings." He said their names like curses. "They see you as a threat, an Omega who caught the king's attention. They wanted to remove you before you gained too much influence." Rage, hot and bitter, flooded through me. "I have no influence. I run an apothecary shop. I am nobody." "You are not nobody to me." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming even in the wreckage. "And that makes you dangerous to them." I wanted to scream, to rage at the unfairness, but Elowen was trembling against my side, and Tom was trying not to cry, and I needed to be strong. "What do you want, Alexander?" I asked tiredly. Did you come to witness their handiwork?" His expression softened. "I came to offer help, protection, resources to rebuild, and vengeance against those who did this if you want it." My laugh was hollow. "And what price do you demand for such generosity?" I expected him to name something impossible. My hand in marriage, my body, my freedom. Instead, he said one word. "Time." I blinked. "What?" "Time to prove I want not to own you but to know you." His voice dropped lower, sincere in a way that made my defenses crack. "Come to the fortress while your shop is rebuilt. Bring your siblings. Let me protect what matters to you. Let me show you I am more than a conqueror looking for his next prize." "You are asking me to live in your fortress." Suspicion sharpened my tone. "Under your roof. Zut in your debt." "I am asking you to let me keep you safe while masons rebuild these walls." He gestured at the ruins. "Your siblings will have warm beds, hot meals, education if they want it. You will have access to the royal healing wing and a workshop for your remedies. When the shop is whole again, you walk away if you choose. No strings, no demands." "You expect me to believe you want nothing in return?" His eyes held mine. "I want your trust, that is all, and I am willing to earn it." The morning sun broke over the ruined walls, casting long shadows. Elowen shivered. Tom looked exhausted. We had nowhere to go, no family left, no savings enough to pay for lodging while rebuilding. I hated that he was right. I hated that I needed him. I hated the hope flickering treacherously in my chest. "If I agree," I said slowly, "my siblings stay with me. Always. We are not separated." "Of course. And I work in the healing wing. I am not a decorative guest. I earn my keep." I would expect nothing less. "And when the shop is rebuilt, we leave. No arguments, no manipulation." Something painful flickered across his face. "If that is what you want, yes." I looked at Elowen's soot-stained face, at Tom's hollow eyes, at the ashes of everything we had. Against every instinct screaming warnings, I nodded. "Fine, we will come." His relief was visible. He signaled his guards, who brought forward extra horses. As Alexander lifted Elowen onto a saddle with surprising gentleness, he leaned close to me and murmured, "I will find who did this, and they will answer for it." The promise in his voice was dark and absolute. For the first time since waking to smoke and flames, I felt something other than despair. I felt dangerous. The fortress was a monument to conquest. Stone walls thick as ancient trees, towers that pierced the sky like spears, corridors that echoed with the ghosts of 1,000 battles. It was magnificent and cold and utterly without mercy, much like its king. The servants who showed us to our chambers were polite but distant. Elowyn and Tom received a shared room next to mine, both chambers larger than our entire shop had been. Tapestries depicting battle victories hung on the walls. The beds had more pillows than seemed necessary. Everything smelled of beeswax and stone and power. "I do not like it here," Elowyn whispered that first night, curled against my side. "It feels like a beautiful prison." I stroked her hair and lied. It is temporary, just until home is rebuilt." But I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. Court was worse than the stones. The noble ladies watched me with eyes like daggers draped in silk. They whispered behind jeweled hands when I passed, loud enough for me to hear every poisoned word. Common Omega, playing at being something she is not. The king's newest amusement. She will be gone before spring. Delusions of grandeur, as if someone like her could ever belong here. The Alpha Lords were less subtle. They treated me with thinly veiled contempt, speaking over me at meals, ignoring my presence entirely, or worse, addressing me with the condescending courtesy reserved for children and servants. I did not shrink. I did not hide. Instead, I found the healing wing. It was tucked in the eastern tower. Overlooked and understaffed. The head healer, an elderly beta named Marin, looked up from bandaging a soldier's arm when I entered. "Can I help you, my lady?" Her tone was wary. "I am no lady. I am Jasmine, and I am here to work." Her eyebrows rose. "Work? I am a healer. I ran an apothecary before it burned. Let me be useful." She studied me for a long moment, then she pointed at a soldier bleeding from a sword training accident. "Stop that bleeding without stitches. Show me what you know." I rolled up my sleeves. By sunset, I had treated 7 soldiers, mixed 3 poultices, and reorganized the herb storage by medicinal property instead of alphabet. Marin watched with grudging approval. "You know your craft," she admitted. "Come back tomorrow." I did, and the day after, and every day following. Word spread quickly. The Omega staying in the king's fortress was not some pampered guest, but a skilled healer willing to tend anyone who needed it. Soldiers began requesting me specifically. Servants came with ailments they had hidden for months. I earned respect not through titles or bloodlines, but through competence and care. Alexander watched from doorways sometimes. I would feel his presence before seeing him, that particular weight of his attention. When our eyes met, something passed between us. Recognition, pride, something warmer that I refused to name. One evening, he appeared at the healing wing as I finished treating a guard's infected wound. "Walk with me," he said quietly. I should have refused, should have maintained the distance I desperately needed. But curiosity and something treacherous in my chest made me nod. Yet he led me through corridors I had never seen, up winding stairs to a tower library filled with books and maps and silence. Moonlight poured through tall windows. The scent of old parchment and leather hung in the air. "This is where I taught myself strategy," he said, trailing fingers along book spines. "When I was young, and everyone said a bastard-born boy could never lead, I read every military text, every history, every account of conquest and defeat. I made myself into something that could not be ignored." "Why show me this?" He turned, and his expression was unguarded in a way I had never seen. "Because you are the only person I want to know me. Not the king. Me." My throat tightened. "Alexander, come. There is more." He led me higher to a tower room with windows open to the night. The wind carried the scent of pine forests and distant rain. Below, the kingdom spread like scattered jewels. "I come here when the crown is too heavy," he said, "when I need to remember I am more than the throne." "And what are you when you are not the throne?" His smile was sad. "I am still discovering that." Then he took me down, through winding paths to a hidden garden behind the fortress. Moonflowers bloomed pale and ghostly. In the center stood a simple stone marker with 2 names carved deep. "My mate, my son," His voice was rough with old grief. She died bringing him into the world, both gone in one night. I thought I buried my capacity to feel anything with them. I said nothing. There were no words for that kind of loss. For years, I was empty. A weapon. A conqueror. Useful but hollow. He looked at me then, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole my breath. Until you. Until a stubborn Omega in a shop smelling of rosemary asked me what ailed me and actually wanted to know the answer. Alexander, you make me want to be more than a weapon, Jasmine. You make me want to be a man again. The air between us was charged, dangerous. I could feel the pull of him like gravity, like inevitability. I cannot be what you need, I whispered. I am not court-trained or politically useful. I am just... You are brilliant and brave and strong enough to stand in the ashes of everything you lost and still choose to rebuild. His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not quite touching. You are exactly what I need. My heart was beating too fast. This was dangerous. Caring was dangerous. But God's help me, I was beginning to care. The shop will be rebuilt soon, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. And then I leave. I know. Pain flickered across his face. But until then, let me know you. Please. I should have refused. Should have reinforced every wall I had built. Instead, I nodded. And as we stood in that garden of grief and moonflowers, I realized with terrifying clarity that I was beginning to see not the Alpha King, but the man beneath. And it scared me more than anything ever had. Because I was beginning to care for him. And caring meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant the possibility of devastating loss. It started as restlessness, a warmth beneath my skin that had nothing to do with the healing wings braziers. I dismissed it as exhaustion, stress, the lingering trauma of watching my life burn. I was wrong. By evening, a fever bloomed through my blood like wildfire. My scent shifted, sweetening into something that made every alpha in the corridor turn and stare with darkening eyes. I recognized it with creeping horror. Heat. Early. Months before it should have come. Proximity to a powerful alpha could trigger it. I had read about it but never experienced it. Until now. I barely made it to my chambers before the first wave hit, dropping me to my knees with a gasp. Pain and need warred inside me, my Omega biology screaming for something I refused to name. Jasmine? Elowen's voice, concerned from the doorway. Get Marin, I managed through gritted teeth. Now, and find Alexander, tell him to stay away. She ran. Marin arrived within minutes, taking one look at me and cursing. Heat, strong one too. We need to get you to the Omega quarters. Isolation protocol. 2 guards carried me through corridors while I shook and burned. The Omega quarters were deep in the fortress, far from the Alpha Lords who might lose control. A small room with thick walls, a bed, water, and a door that locked from the outside. A beautiful cage. 3 days, typically, Marin said, settling me onto the bed. I will bring water and cool cloths. Try to rest. Rest. As if that were possible while my body tore itself apart with need. She left. The lock clicked. And then, from the other side of the door, I heard him. Jasmine, Alexander's voice, rough and strained. Go away, I gasped, curling into myself as another wave of heat crashed through me. No. Alexander, you cannot. A whimper escaped me, humiliating and beyond my control. Your instincts will... I am staying. His voice was firm despite the tension I could hear underneath. I will not leave you alone in this. You are an alpha. My scent will... I know what it will do. A thud, like he had sat down against the door. I am staying anyway. Fool. Stubborn, impossible fool. The first day was agony. My body burned from the inside, slick and shaking, every nerve ending screaming for an alpha's touch. His scent seeped under the door, pine and steel and something uniquely Alexander, making everything worse and somehow better at the same time. I could hear his breathing, labored, controlled, the sound of a man fighting every instinct his biology possessed. Why are you doing this? I whispered into the darkness. Because you should not be alone. His voice was strained. Oh, because I will not take advantage of your vulnerability. Because you deserve better than an alpha who cannot control himself. It costs you. I can hear it. Yes. A pause. You are worth the cost. Something inside me cracked. The second day was worse. Fever peaked. I was barely coherent, whimpering and calling out for things I would never ask for in my right mind. Marin came periodically with water, forcing me to drink, bathing my forehead with cool cloths. But Alexander never left his post. I could hear him through the walls. The low sound of his voice, rough and soothing, telling me stories I barely comprehended. About battles and books and the first time he tried to cook and nearly burned down the fortress kitchens. Anything to remind me I was not alone. I am here, he kept saying. I am here, Jasmine. You are safe, safe. Ithel with an alpha outside my door while I burned with heat. It should have been impossible, but somehow I believed him. The third day, the fever finally broke. I woke weak and dehydrated, my body wrung out like cloth twisted dry. The heat had passed, leaving me hollow and trembling. The door opened. Marin checked me over, nodded approval, and left. Then Alexander entered. He looked like he had fought a war. Eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched, every muscle tight with residual tension. But his hands were gentle when he lifted me from the soaked sheets. What are you? My chambers, he said quietly. You need proper care. I can walk. You can barely lift your head. Let me help. Too weak to argue, I let him carry me through corridors. His scent wrapped around me, no longer triggering heat, but somehow still comforting, safe. His chambers were grander than mine, but he took me straight to the bathing room. A large copper tub sat steaming, herbs floating on the water's surface. Chamomile, lavender, things to soothe and restore. He set me down carefully and turned away. I will wait outside while you... Stay. The word escaped before I could stop it. He froze. Jasmine, you sat outside my door for 3 days. My voice was hoarse. You can turn your back for 10 minutes while I bathe. After a long moment, he nodded and turned to face the wall. I stripped off the sweat-soaked shift and lowered myself into the water with a groan. Bliss. Pure bliss. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For staying. For not... My throat closed. For proving you meant what you said. His shoulders tensed. So, did you think I would force myself on you during heat? I did not know what to think. Most alphas would not have the control. I am not most alphas. He turned slightly, enough that I saw his profile. And you are not just any Omega. You are Jasmine, the woman who saw me as a man instead of a crown, the one person I would rather die than harm. Something inside me, some final wall I had been clinging to, crumbled. He spent the next hour tending me with his own hands, bathing my fevered skin with cool cloths, coaxing me to drink water mixed with honey and herbs, combing the tangles from my hair with infinite patience. Never once did his touch stray inappropriately. Never once did he take advantage. When he finally settled me into his bed, wrapped in clean linen that smelled of him, I caught his hand. Oh, Alexander. Yes? I am beginning to trust you. The admission terrified me, and that scares me more than anything. He knelt beside the bed, bringing our faces level. Why? Because trust means vulnerability, and vulnerability means you could destroy me. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Then I will spend every day proving I would rather destroy myself than hurt you. I looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw only sincerity, only devotion that should have been impossible after so short a time. Stay, I whispered, just until I fall asleep. He nodded and settled into the chair beside the bed, my hand still held in his. As exhaustion pulled me under, one thought echoed through my fading consciousness. I was not just beginning to trust him. I was beginning to love him. And that changed everything. Duke Corvin arrived at court like a storm wrapped in velvet and arrogance. He was handsome in the way of men who knew it and wielded beauty like a weapon. Golden hair, sharp features, eyes the color of winter ice. His entourage was excessive, his wardrobe ostentatious, and his smile calculated to charm and disarm. He set his sights on me immediately. "Lady Jasmine," he said at the welcoming feast, though I had never claimed the title. He bowed with exaggerated courtesy. "I have heard fascinating tales of the healer who has captured our king's attention." "I am no lady, just Jasmine." I did not return his smile. "And I have captured no one." "Modest as well as beautiful." His eyes swept over me with obvious appreciation. "A rare combination." Alexander, seated at the high table, went very still. Even from across the hall, I felt the weight of his stare. Corvin noticed. His smile sharpened. Over the following days, Corvin made his interest painfully obvious. He appeared at the healing wing with fabricated ailments. He requested my presence at meals, engaging me in conversation that was always just appropriate enough to avoid direct offense. He complimented my skill, my intelligence, my appearance, each word delivered with calculated charm and sideways glances at Alexander. He was not interested in me. He was interested in provoking the king. I was simply the convenient weapon. "You should be careful of that one," Marin warned as we prepared tinctures one afternoon. "Duke Corvin is dangerous, ambitious, and he resents that Alexander never granted him the military command he believes he deserves. He does not want me. He wants to humiliate Alexander. And you are caught in the middle," she gave me a knowing look, "though perhaps not as unwillingly as you pretend." I ignored that and returned to grinding willow bark with more force than necessary. The formal feast arrived 2 weeks after Corvin's appearance. The great hall glittered with torchlight and excess. Noble families displayed their wealth through jewels and silk. Servants carried platters of roasted meat and honeyed fruit. Wine flowed like water. I sat at a side table with other non-noble guests, wearing a simple dress Elowyn had helped me choose. Deep green wool, well-made but unadorned. I refused to pretend to be something I was not. Alexander sat at the high table in his crown and formal regalia, looking every inch the conqueror king. But his eyes found mine across the hall, and something warm passed between us, until Corvin stood. "A toast," he announced, his voice carrying through the hall. Conversations died. All attention turned to him. "To our king, Alexander, who has led us to prosperity and conquest." Goblets rose. Alexander nodded acknowledgement, though his expression was wary. Corvin continued, his tone shifting subtly. "Though I confess concern for His Majesty's recent, distraction. When a king becomes so besotted with a common Omega that he cannot see her obvious manipulation, one must question his fitness to rule." The hall went silent. Shock rippled through the assembled nobles like a stone thrown into still water. I felt every eye turn to me, felt the weight of judgment, curiosity, schadenfreude. Alexander's hands clenched on the table, his eyes darkened dangerously. But Corvin was not finished. "We all know how Omegas operate, pretty words and sweeter scents, designed to ensnare powerful alphas for position and wealth. This healer," he said the word like an insult, "has cleverly positioned herself as indispensable, playing on our king's loneliness to secure her own advancement. It is a tale as old as, Enough." My voice cut through his speech like a blade through silk. I stood slowly, every eye now locked on me. My heart hammered, but my hands remained steady. I had faced flames and loss and the destruction of everything I loved. I would not be cowed by an ambitious duke with a vendetta. "You speak of manipulation, Duke Corvin?" I let my voice carry, clear and cold. "Let us examine the facts. I refused the king's invitation to dine. I refused his gifts. I came to this fortress only after my shop was burned by rivals who saw me as a threat, and only on the condition that I work in the healing wing, earning my keep through skill rather than favor. I took a step forward. The hall was so silent I could hear the torches crackling. I have asked for nothing, accepted nothing beyond shelter while my home is rebuilt. I have tended soldiers and servants alike, noble and common without discrimination. Tell me, Duke Corvin, how many lives have you saved with your own hands? How many wounds have you closed? How many fevers have you broken? His jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but I continued. My value lies not in bloodline or beauty, but in knowledge and skill. I have saved more lives in this fortress than you have likely taken on your hunting trips. And as for manipulation, I allowed scorn to color my tone. If I were truly the scheming Omega you describe, would I have refused the king's advances repeatedly? Would I maintain my own chambers? Would I insist on leaving once my shop is rebuilt? Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clearly, court gossip had not included those details. I turned then to face Alexander directly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something fierce and hungry and utterly focused on me. I will say this once, for all to hear. My voice did not waver. When and if I ever accept any man, be he king or commoner, it will be because he has earned my respect through his character, his integrity, and his actions, not because he commanded my submission, not because he bought my affection, not because his bloodline or crown made him believe he deserved me. I let my gaze sweep the hall, landing on every noble who had whispered about me, every alpha who had treated me with contempt. I am not a prize to be won or a tool to be manipulated. I am Jasmine. I am a healer. I am worth more than your assumptions and your petty political games, and any man who cannot see that is not worthy of my time, regardless of his title. Then I turned back to Corvin, who had gone pale with rage. As for you, Duke, perhaps you should examine your own motivations. This performance has nothing to do with concern for the king's fitness and everything to do with your wounded pride that he values someone's skill over your empty flattery and bloated sense of entitlement. The hall erupted. Shocked gasps, delighted whispers. Till a few scandalized exclamations. Someone laughed, quickly stifled. I stood my ground, heart racing but chin high, refusing to show the fear coursing through my veins. Alexander rose from his seat. The hall fell silent immediately. He descended from the high table with predatory grace, every eye tracking his movement. When he reached me, I expected anger, expected consequences for speaking so boldly in front of his entire court. Instead, he smiled, not the cold smile of a conqueror, but something warm and proud and entirely genuine. Well said, he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. Then he turned to address the hall, his voice carrying absolute authority. Lady Jasmine speaks truth. She has refused my advances. She maintains her independence. She works tirelessly in the healing wing, saving lives and earning respect through competence rather than manipulation. Any who question her character or motivations will answer to me personally. His eyes found Corvin. As for fitness to rule, Duke Corvin, I would suggest that a king who values skill and integrity over bloodline and flattery is far more fit than one who does not. Your concern is noted and dismissed. The threat in those final words was unmistakable. Corvin bowed stiffly and sat down, his humiliation complete. Alexander offered me his hand. Walk with me. I should have refused, should have returned to my seat and let the gossip die down. But his eyes held a question, a plea, a challenge I could not ignore. I took his hand. He led me from the hall, whispers exploding behind us like wildfire. We walked in silence through torch-lit corridors until we reached the tower room with windows open to the night. That was remarkably foolish, he said finally, turning to face me, and incredibly brave. He insulted us both. Someone needed to answer. Most would have let me defend you. I do not need you to defend me. I can defend myself. His smile widened. I know. That is what makes you extraordinary. He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from him, the barely controlled intensity in every line of his body. You stood before my entire court and declared that any man who wants you must earn you." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "Tell me, Jasmine, what must I do to earn you?" My breath caught. This was the moment, the precipice. "You already know," I whispered. You have been doing it since the day you sat outside my door during heat, since you carried me when I could not walk, since you showed me your grief and your loneliness and trusted me with the parts of yourself you hide from everyone else." His hand lifted, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. "Then tell me I have a chance. Tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel for you." I should have lied, should have protected myself, but I was done lying, done hiding. "You terrify me, Alexander," I admitted, "because I do feel it, and feeling means risking everything." "Then risk it with me," he breathed. "Please." And when he kissed me, gentle and desperate and full of restrained hunger, I finally stopped fighting. I kissed him back and let myself fall. The scream tore through my dreams like a blade through silk. "Jasmine!" Elowen, terrified, in danger. I bolted upright, heart hammering, and grabbed the small leather satchel I kept beside my bed. My healer's kit. Inside, among the herbs and bandages, were needles tipped with concentrated nightshade extract. Enough to paralyze but not kill. My mother had taught me that healers must sometimes protect as well as cure. I ran barefoot into the corridor, my nightdress streaming behind me. Elowen and Tom's chamber door stood open, torchlight spilling across the threshold like spilled blood. Inside, 3 masked figures dressed in black surrounded my siblings. Steel blades glinted in their hands. Elowen was pressed against the wall, crying. Tom stood in front of her, 13 years old and trembling but refusing to move. "Get away from them!" I snarled. The nearest assassin turned. I saw his eyes widen in surprise behind the mask, saw him dismiss me as a threat. His mistake. I lunged forward and drove the poisoned needle into his neck. He convulsed and dropped, paralyzed before he could cry out. The second assassin moved faster, his blade arcing toward me. I twisted away, feeling the whisper of steel pass my ribs. Too close. My hand found another needle and I buried it in his thigh as he overextended. He collapsed with a strangled gasp, but the third was already moving toward Tom. "No!" I threw myself between them, weaponless, desperate. The blade rose. I saw my death in its descent. Then the door exploded inward. Alexander entered like violence given form, still in his sleep clothes but moving with the brutal efficiency of a man born to warfare. He caught the assassin's wrist mid-strike, twisted, and I heard bone snap. The man screamed. Alexander drove his fist into the assassin's throat, crushing his windpipe, and let the body fall. But there were more. 2 more assassins poured through the doorway, clearly not expecting resistance. "Get behind me," Alexander ordered, positioning himself between the threat and my siblings. The assassins attacked in tandem, coordinated and professional. Alexander moved like a storm, all controlled fury and devastating precision. He disarmed the first with a move too fast to follow, snapping the man's neck with cold efficiency. The last assassin feinted left, drew Alexander's attention, then pivoted toward Tom with his blade extended. "Tom!" My scream tore from my throat. Alexander saw it a heartbeat too late. He threw himself sideways, intercepting the blade meant for my brother. The dagger sank deep into his side. Alexander grunted, grabbed the assassin's head with both hands, and twisted sharply. The crack echoed through the chamber. The body fell. Then Alexander collapsed. "No! No! No! No!" I dropped beside him, my hands already moving to the wound. Blood poured between my fingers, hot and terrifyingly red. The blade had gone deep, possibly nicking something vital. "Elowen!" I snapped, forcing my voice steady. "Get Marin now! Run!" She fled, sobbing. "Tom, help me get him up!" My brother was shaking, but he obeyed. Together, we half-carried, half-dragged Alexander down the corridor toward my workroom in the healing wing. He was conscious but fading, his breathing shallow and labored. "Stay with me," I commanded. "Alexander, stay with me. Protecting." "Say what you love," he managed through gritted teeth. Like you said. Shut up and save your strength. We reached the workroom. I swept everything off the table with one arm and Tom helped me lift Alexander onto it. Blood soaked through his shirt, pooling on the wood. Marin burst through the door, took one look and began gathering supplies without being asked. Boiled water, clean cloth, needles and gut thread for stitching. "Ella and Tom, wait outside," I ordered. "But now!" They left reluctantly. The door closed. I cut away Alexander's shirt and examined the wound. Deep, bleeding heavily, but the blade had missed the kidney by a finger's width. If I could stop the bleeding, pack it properly, prevent infection... "This will hurt," I warned. His hand found mine, gripped hard. Do it." I worked with hands that should have been shaking but remained steady through sheer force of will. My mother had taught me that a healer's emotions could not interfere with their work. Feel later, save them first. I packed the wound with yarrow to stop the bleeding, flushed it with alcohol that made Alexander's entire body go rigid, and began stitching. Small, precise sutures, closing the deepest layers first. Marin handed me instruments without being asked, anticipating my needs. "He took a blade for my brother," I whispered. "He loves you," Marin said simply. Of course he protected them. Hours passed. The wound closed layer by layer. I applied a poultice of comfrey and calendula, wrapped his torso in clean bandages, and finally stepped back. His breathing was shallow but steadier. His color was bad but not critical. Yet he might survive. Might. "Go rest," Marin said gently. "I will watch him." "No!" My voice was hoarse. "I stay!" She did not argue. I pulled a chair beside the table and took Alexander's hand. It was still warm. Still alive. I pressed my fingers to his wrist and counted his pulse. Weak but present. "Do not die," I whispered. "Please, Alexander, do not die." Dawn crept through the windows, pale and gray. Marin brought me water I did not drink and bread I could not eat. I sat vigil, watching every breath, every flutter of his eyelids, every sign of life. At some point, my face grew wet. I touched my cheeks and found tears. I was crying. For him. For the possibility of losing him. For the terrifying realization that somewhere between his first visit to my shop and this moment, he had become essential to me. I loved him. The knowledge crashed over me like a wave, undeniable and absolute. I loved this stubborn, scarred, lonely king who had knelt outside my door during heat, who had shown me his grief and his library and his carefully hidden heart, who had taken a blade meant for my brother without hesitation. I loved him so much it terrified me. "Please do not leave me," I whispered into his palm. "Not now. Not when I have finally admitted what you mean to me." His fingers twitched in mine. My breath caught. "Alexander?" His eyes opened slowly, storm gray and clouded with pain but aware, alive. "Jasmine," he rasped. "You absolute fool," my voice broke. "You could have died. Your brother," he tried to sit up and I pushed him back down, "is fine because of you. You saved him." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Told you. I would protect what you love." "I love you, you idiot!" The words tore from me, raw and unguarded. "I love you and you almost died and I cannot—" A sob choked off the rest. His hand lifted weakly to my face, wiping away tears. "Say it again." "You almost died." The other part. I laughed through my tears, broken and relieved and overwhelmed. "I love you. I fought it and denied it and tried to protect myself, but it does not matter. I love you, Alexander." His smile widened despite the pain etched in every line of his face. "Worth it. Taking a dagger was worth it? Hearing you say that?" His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "Worth anything." I leaned down carefully and kissed him. Gentle, reverent, grateful beyond words. When I pulled back, His eyes were already closing again, exhaustion claiming him. But his hand remained in mine, holding on. "Rest," I murmured. "I am here. I will not leave." His fingers tightened briefly in acknowledgement. As he drifted into healing sleep, I sat back and let myself feel everything I had been holding at bay. The terror, the relief, the overwhelming, consuming love for this man who had proven repeatedly that he valued me and mine above his own life. Marin touched my shoulder. "He will live, Jasmine. You saved him." "He saved us first," I whispered. I stayed beside him through the day and into the next night. When he woke again, stronger this time, I was there. When fever threatened on the second day, I fought it with cool cloths and willow bark tea. When he tried to downplay the injury, I lectured him until he surrendered with a tired smile. And when he was finally strong enough to sit up, to eat, to argue that he needed to return to his duties, I told him again, "I love you." His expression softened into something so tender it made my chest ache. "I know. You told me. I thought I dreamed it." "It was real." I took his face in my hands. All of it. "I love you, Alexander, and I am done fighting it." He pulled me carefully into his arms, mindful of his healing wound, and held me like I was something precious, irreplaceable. "Marry me," he breathed into my hair. "Ask me properly first." His laugh was soft and full of promise. "Soon, when I can kneel without bleeding." "I will hold you to that." "I know," he murmured. "I am counting on it." 10 days after the attack, Alexander sent word through Marin. "He requests your presence in the Great Hall. 1 hour. My stomach twisted. "Why?" She gave me a knowing look. I suspect you will find out." I dressed carefully, choosing a deep blue gown Elowen had insisted I accept from the royal seamstress. Simple but well-made, with embroidery at the cuffs that reminded me of herbs and vines. I braided my hair back and tried to calm my racing heart. When I entered the Great Hall, I stopped short. The entire court was assembled. Hundreds of faces turned toward me, noble and common alike. Torches blazed in their sconces, filling the vast space with flickering light. At the far end, on the raised dais, Alexander stood before his throne. He was dressed in formal regalia, the deep crimson and black of his house, his crown glinting gold in the firelight. But he was still pale, moving with the careful stiffness of someone whose wound had not fully healed. What was he doing out of bed? "Jasmine!" he called, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "Come forward." Every eye tracked my movement as I walked the length of the hall. My footsteps echoed on stone. The weight of judgment, curiosity, and speculation pressed down from all sides. I reached the base of the dais and looked up at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something fierce and determined. "You asked me here," I said, proud that my voice remained steady. "Why?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned to address the assembled court. "I stand before you as your king," he began, his voice resonating with authority. "A crown earned through conquest and held through strength. I have led armies, expanded territories, made decisions that cost lives and saved kingdoms. I have done what duty demanded, always placing the crown above all else." The court listened in rapt silence. "But a crown is not a man, and I have been only a crown for too long." His gaze swept the hall. "I have forgotten what it means to be human, to feel, to want something beyond the next conquest or the next threat." He paused, and his eyes found mine. "Until her." My breath caught. Jasmine came into my life when I believed I had nothing left to offer except duty and violence. She did not bow, she did not flatter. She treated me as a man instead of a king, and in doing so, reminded me I could be more than a weapon. His hands lifted to his crown. "She has given me more than healing herbs and skilled hands. She has given me purpose beyond conquest, hope beyond duty, and love I thought I would never feel again. The hall was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. Alexander removed his crown and set it carefully on the throne behind him. The collective gasp rippled through the court like wind through wheat. No king removed his crown in public, ever. It was symbolic suicide, an abdication of power and authority. But Alexander descended the steps, moving slowly, each movement precise despite the pain I knew he was hiding. He approached me, and the crowd parted instinctively, creating a clear space around us. Before I could speak, before I could breathe, he lowered himself to both knees before me. The hall erupted in shocked gasps. Someone cried out in dismay. I heard frantic whispers, disbelief, scandal. No king knelt, not to foreign rulers, not to gods, not to anyone. But Alexander knelt before me, an Omega healer from a burned shop in the market quarter, and looked up at me with naked vulnerability that stole every thought from my mind.
"I am not commanding you,"
he said, his voice rough with emotion.
"I am not claiming you as spoils of conquest or demanding submission. I am asking you, Jasmine."
His hands were open, empty, offering nothing but himself. "Please marry me, not because of what I am, not because of the crown or the power or the kingdom, but despite all of it. Choose me, the man beneath the title, the one who cannot sleep without your remedies, who feels human only when you look at him, who would take 1,000 blades if it meant keeping you and yours safe." His voice cracked. "I know I am difficult. I know I come with complications and dangers and a court full of vipers. I know you value your independence and your shop and your freedom. I am not asking you to give those up. Keep your shop. Keep your work. Keep everything that makes you who you are." Tears blurred my vision. "All I am asking is that you let me stand beside you, not above you, not commanding you, just beside you, as your partner, your equal, your husband, if you will have me." The hall held its collective breath. "Choose me, Jasmine." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried in the absolute silence. "Please, I am begging you." I stared down at this powerful, broken, beautiful man who ruled kingdoms and commanded armies, now on both knees before me, offering not dominance but partnership, not possession but choice. He had given me the one thing no one else ever could, the freedom to walk away, to refuse, to choose. And in giving me that freedom, he had proven he understood what I needed most. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I extended my hand, trembling, and laid it against his scarred cheek. "Yes." The word was barely audible, but he heard it. His eyes closed briefly, relief crashing across his features so profound it was almost painful to witness. "Yes," I said again, louder this time, my voice carrying through the hall. "I choose you, Alexander, not the king, not the crown. You. The man who sat outside my door during heat, who showed me his grief and his loneliness, who took a blade for my brother without hesitation, who kneels before me now and offers partnership instead of dominance." I cupped his face in both hands. "Yes, I will marry you." The hall erupted. Applause, cheers, shocked exclamations, and undoubtedly some scandalized protests, but I did not hear any of it, because Alexander rose carefully, mindful of his healing wound, and pulled me into his arms. His kiss was deep and desperate and full of restrained joy, and I kissed him back with everything I had been holding inside. When we finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for giving me the choice." He pulled back slightly, his hands framing my face. "I love you. I should have said it before. I love you, Jasmine, more than I thought myself capable of loving anything again." "I love you too." The words came easily now, no longer frightening, just true. "Even when you are being an impossible, stubborn, self-sacrificing fool." His laugh was bright and genuine, the sound of a man who had finally found something worth celebrating. He turned to the court, keeping one arm around my waist, anchoring me to his side.
"Let it be known," he declared, his voice ringing with authority, "that Jasmine has agreed to be my queen, not through command, not through pressure, but through her own free choice. And any who question her right to stand beside me will answer to me personally."
His eyes found Duke Corvin in the crowd. The Duke's face was pale with barely suppressed rage, but he bowed his head in acknowledgement.
"Furthermore," Alexander continued, "my queen will maintain her healing practice. The apothecary shop will be rebuilt and remain hers. She will work in the healing wing as she chooses. She will have voice in matters of policy affecting healers, omegas, and common folk. She is not an ornament but a partner, an advisor, an equal." Shocked murmurs rippled through the court, but no one dared protest openly. Alexander retrieved his crown from the throne and settled it back on his head, but he kept his other hand firmly in mine. "Prepare for a wedding," he announced, "and make it worthy of a queen who deserves to be celebrated for who she is, not what title she accepts." The hall erupted again in applause and cheers, more genuine this time. As servants rushed to begin preparations and nobles approached to offer congratulations, Alexander leaned down and whispered in my ear, "No regrets?" I looked up at him, at this man who had proven repeatedly that love was not about possession, but about seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. "None," I whispered back. "Yeah, not a single one." His smile was blinding. And as we stood together before the court, king and healer, alpha and omega, two people who had found in each other not completion but complement, I knew with absolute certainty I had made the right choice. Love began not with dominance or destiny, but with the courage to kneel before someone and ask them to choose you. And he had chosen me first by giving me the freedom to choose him. That was everything. The apothecary shop stood rebuilt, better than before. The walls smelled of fresh timber and new paint, but I had hung the same herbs my mother once used. Rosemary for remembrance, lavender for devotion, chamomile for peace. This was where it would happen. Not in a grand cathedral, not before 1,000 nobles. Here, where everything began. "You are certain about this?" Elowin asked, adjusting the wildflower crown in my hair. Daisies and cornflowers, woven with sprigs of thyme. Simple. Perfect. I have never been more certain of anything. My gown was simple cream linen, embroidered at the hem with vines and healing herbs. No jewels, no excessive finery, just me. Tom appeared in the doorway, now 15 and nearly as tall as Alexander. He is ready, and he looks like he might actually be nervous. I smiled. Good, he should be. The shop could hold perhaps 30 people. We had invited only those who mattered. Marin and the healing wing staff, my siblings, Alexander's most trusted advisors, and a handful of villagers who had helped rebuild after the fire. When I emerged from the back room, Alexander stood waiting near the counter where we first met. He wore simple black and crimson, his crown noticeably absent. Just a man. Just Alexander. His eyes widened when he saw me, and the naked emotion on his face made my breath catch. "You are beautiful," he whispered as I approached. "You are not wearing your crown." "I am not marrying you as a king. I am marrying you as a man who loves you." The ceremony was brief, conducted by a village elder who had known my mother. No grand speeches, no political pageantry, just vows. When it came time to speak them, Alexander took my hands and his voice was steady, but thick with emotion. "I promise not to cage you, but to guard your freedom. Not to diminish you, but to stand beside you as your equal. Not to command your submission, but to earn your respect every day. I promise to see you, Jasmine, always. Not as a possession or a prize, but as the remarkable woman who saved me from becoming only a weapon." His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. "I promise to love you, not despite your strength, but because of it. And I promise that when I forget these vows, you will remind me, loudly, as only you can." Laughter rippled through the small gathering. Then it was my turn. I looked into his storm-gray eyes and spoke from my heart. "I promise to challenge you when you need it and support you when you falter. To heal not just your body but your spirit when the crown becomes too heavy. To build with you a partnership where neither of us is diminished, but both of us are strengthened." My voice caught, but I continued. "I promise to love you, Alexander. Not the king, not the conqueror, you. The man who learned to kneel. The man who sat outside my door. The man who gave me the one thing I needed most, the freedom to choose him. And I choose you, today, tomorrow, always." When the elder pronounced us bonded, Alexander pulled me close and kissed me with the tenderness and passion of a man who had finally found home. The bonding that followed that night was intense and transformative, the alpha-omega connection forging something deeper than either of us imagined possible. Not possession, not dominance, but partnership. Two souls intertwining, strengthening each other rather than consuming. Years passed in a blur of purpose and partnership. I established healing houses in every territory, training omegas and betas and anyone who wanted to learn the craft. Alexander supported every initiative, providing resources and protection for healers who had long been overlooked. Together we changed laws. Omegas gained rights to own property, to work, to refuse unwanted bonds. Commoners received access to healing and education previously reserved for nobility. We had 2 children, a daughter named Iris, who inherited my stubbornness and Alexander's strategic mind, and a son named Rowan, who had his father's strength and my compassion. They grew up knowing that strength came in many forms and that true love was built on respect and choice, not dominance and submission. Elowen became a master healer, opening her own practice in the Eastern Territories. Tom married a merchant's daughter and ran a network of healing supply distribution across the kingdom. The shop remained mine. I worked there twice a week, grinding herbs and mixing remedies, refusing to let my crown separate me from my roots. And through it all, Jesse Alexander stood beside me, not commanding, not controlling, just present, my partner in every sense. Decades passed. One evening, gray-haired and content, we stood in the fortress gardens watching our grandchildren play. Iris's daughter chased butterflies while Rowan's twin sons climbed trees with more enthusiasm than skill. Alexander took my hand, his fingers still strong despite the years, the silver in his beard catching the fading sunlight. "You saved me, you know," he said quietly, "from becoming a monster, from being only a weapon. You gave me back my humanity." I smiled and shook my head. "No. You saved yourself when you learned to kneel, when you chose vulnerability over dominance, when you gave me the freedom to choose you." I squeezed his hand. "I just gave you a reason to want to." He pulled me close, and I leaned into him, our bodies fitting together after decades of practice. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life?" I looked at our grandchildren playing, at the healing houses visible in the distance, at the kingdom we had built together through partnership and respect rather than conquest and force. Not for a single moment. His kiss was soft against my temple. "Neither do I." As the sun set over the gardens, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, I reflected on the journey that brought us here. From a dusty apothecary shop to a fortress garden, from a homeless king seeking remedy for sleepless nights to a man who had learned that true strength lay in surrender to the right person. We had found in each other not completion but complement, not salvation but partnership, not possession but choice. And that made all the difference. Love, I had learned, began not with dominance or destiny or fated bonds. It began with seeing someone fully, flaws and strengths alike, and choosing them anyway. It began with the courage to kneel, the bravery to be vulnerable, the wisdom to offer freedom instead of demanding submission. Alexander had given me that, and in return,
I had given him something he thought he lost forever. The chance to be human again. That was the greatest healing of all. As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, we stood together, Alpha and Omega, king and healer, two people who had fought for and built a love worth having. And I knew with absolute certainty, this was exactly where I belonged. Not because fate demanded it, not because biology dictated it, but because we chose it. Every day. Through challenges and triumphs, through wounds and healing, through decades of partnership. We chose each other. And that choice made all the difference. Thank you for following Jasmine and Alexander's journey from that first meeting in an apothecary shop to a lifetime of partnership and love. Their story proves that the strongest bonds are built not on dominance but on respect, not on possession but on freedom, and that true love begins when someone has the courage to kneel and ask you to choose them. Where are you watching from, and what was your favorite moment in this story? Was it when Alexander first knelt outside Jasmine's door during her heat, when she stood up to Duke Corvin before the entire court? Or when the Alpha King removed his crown and asked an Omega healer to choose him? Share your thoughts below. I would love to hear which moment touched your heart the most.